Welcome to this special edition of the AFC Press Newsroom. I'm Brian Jodice of the American Federation for Children, joined today by my friend and AFC's new media director and Louisiana resident and native, Paul Dauphin. Hey, Paul, how are you, man?
Thank you, Brian. Good to be here today.
Yeah, we're going to have a really incredible conversation. I don't use the word incredible lightly because we're talking about something that has a heavy background to it, because on August 29th, 2005, 20 years ago today, the world changed forever for many across Louisiana, especially in the state's crown jewel city of New Orleans, as Hurricane Katrina, a devastating Category 3 hurricane, made landfall, causing catastrophic damage when the levees were breached, leading to widespread flooding. The storm resulted in over 1,800 deaths and caused an estimated $161 billion in damage, making it the costliest hurricane in U.S. history. And really, Paul, for you and for those of our audience watching and listening, and our guests that will join us, a really life-changing moment.
And that's the word, Brian, life-changing. I think back to that day, that really weekend. My wife and I, at the time, we were consulting with some local charter schools here in New Orleans. And yes, charters predated Katrina here, but we were preparing for a meeting with prospective operators and got that weather warning from the National Weather Service that basically indicated it would be a devastating hit by a hurricane. And we've evacuated before here and never got a warning like that. So we left town and we did like what a lot of New Orleanians do, because this wasn't the first evacuation. We took about 3 days worth of clothes. We packed, we left. We were living in a suburb just outside of New Orleans. And, we thought we'd be back in 3 days. In reality, this was late August. We didn't come back until November for us. For so much in New Orleans, 1,000+ people died. Many people never came back. Many people took years to come back. And the question was, how do we rebuild the city? And then it was when we started thinking it through, can we rebuild the city without schools?
Yeah. And that's such an incredible thing to think about. And you think about families displaced and careers displaced, but then also students. So it's this inflection point for education in Louisiana. And in the post-hurricane recovery efforts, we meet a cast of characters in this story who would reshape education in the coming weeks, months, and years. Let's introduce you to one of those leaders now. She is a former state legislator, a champion for educational freedom, Ann Duplessis. And welcome. A real pleasure to have you join us today.
Thank you. I'm honored to be part of this today.
Mm-hmm. Paul, why don't you start us off? Because you guys obviously just have such an incredible history together. You've been around Ann for a long time, and you're Louisiana natives, and this is your home state.
Yeah. Ann, thinking back to that time, after we were trying to live and get our bearings, the thing that quickly came to us, especially those who were involved in education, or for you were a lawmaker back then. And it was, how do we rebuild this city? Yeah. So talk about how education fit into that, because it was so crucial.
Yeah. So, Paul, thank you again. I think this is really an important discussion as it relates to, a look back of where we were. And you use the word incredible, but what an incredible storm this was, and what it did to just disrupt an entire city. When we look back and we thought about when we started planning or trying to plan, how were we going to bring the city back? What was it going to look like? Was it going to be bigger? Was it going to be smaller? We used to say that we had a blessing in disguise because we had a clean slate. We had an opportunity to bring this city back better. We had without disrupting, because it was all disrupted. And education played a primary role and a major role, but the dilemma at the time was, what do we do first with little resources, meaning money? The teachers were gone, the kids were gone, the buildings were gone, and we had no money.
Mm.
And so, it was like the chicken and the egg. What comes first, right? What do we do? Do we invest in infrastructure, buildings,
Mhm.
right? How do we get people back? People are not coming back when there are no homes to come back to. People are not bringing their kids from new environments. They had moved to Texas and California and Atlanta, where they were in great schools. They were not coming, not parents did not want to disrupt that even more when all of a sudden their kids who were in previously failing schools pre-Katrina were now in great schools. Our schools were in such dire condition. And so, fast forward post Katrina, um, we had to play this, how do we bring schools back as fast as possible? How do we bring people back? But families were not going to come back without an infrastructure.
Mhm.
So we had to begin, identifying at one point, the state had taken over all of the schools. So the state tried to run schools just to get buildings open, get people in. But that was not good, because when we did get people back, and teachers back, um, they were in pods. We didn't have district-wide schools. We had certain schools, but the teachers were more at the time, rightfully so. They were also dealing with devastation. They weren't concerned with truly teaching. So we had kids who were back, teachers who were back, but no learning was happening.
Mhm.
Nothing was going on. And that was the challenge, at the time. So we made some decisions that we needed to bring in we needed to bring in help. People wanted to help us. And so we looked at the charter school opportunities,
Mhm.
private charter schools that could come in, who were not exhausted, who were not, their focus wasn't rebuilding a home, but helping us to rebuild a city on the education side. And I am forever grateful that without that infusion of resources, that we probably would not have been able to come back as strong as we did.
So it's a fight for your city first and foremost, right? It's a fight to get folks back, rebuild this city. But then as that is happening, and as sort of this new phase of what education will look like specifically across New Orleans, but even across southern Louisiana, there becomes a fight for more parent empowerment.
Yes.
And not just what can we do innovative with charter schools, but how can we help families as they're returning or rebuilding get access to private school choice like maybe they've never had before. So you not only had to fight for that, but maybe even got into some political and policy fights with members of your own party. You had to team up with, maybe across the aisle like you would have never envisioned before, as this then movement for not only, strong public schools to get them better, get charters in there, but then this idea of maybe we bring a voucher style program to Louisiana, a voucher style program in New Orleans to
You,
help kids.
it wasn't, for me at least, it wasn't about party politics. As my time in the Senate was never about party politics. I am a proud Democrat. I have to say that, but my decisions are based on what's right. My decisions, and especially at that time, when I was actually looking into the eyes of children who were sent back home and who lived in trailers and who were figuratively dying because nothing was happening in their world. And so I couldn't, I couldn't, um, um, I couldn't make decisions based on what the party or tradition
Mhm.
of supporting unions or tradition of supporting this traditional public school structure. It was failing. It had been failing for 50 years prior. It had failed children for 50 years prior. It didn't work. And so what's the definition of insanity? Continuing to doing the same thing that we know does not work because of tradition. I don't know. But I was not going to allow my time or my legacy to be part of that. I had to be part of the solution. I had to make a choice. And you know what? Yeah, members of my party, colleagues, they gave me some rough times. But it didn't really matter at the time. And it's well, actually still doesn't matter, but it really didn't matter. We had to bring kids back. We had to bring them back in safe environments. And then once we brought them back, we had to make sure that they weren't lost, because to bring them back and put them in a building that nothing was happening, we were losing them. And this parental involvement now, this new resurgence of an energy of parents now saying, hey, you know what? I have seen what the other side looks like. I still want that. I came home because this is home. But now I understand what good looks like. I understand what opportunity looks like. And I want to make sure that what they had in Texas or what they had in Atlanta or what they had wherever they were, and when we came back, now I'm going to fight for those same things. And that's power,
Paul, maybe one more with Ann before we give her a quick break. We're going to bring her back a little bit later in the show, though.
What's the, and again, and you've been watching, there have been tons of documentaries and stuff that are being released this week, and we're seeing them here in New Orleans, little reunions and stuff, but which makes you go back to 2005. What's the one moment you remember from that time that just stays with you?
I think the one moment that I remember was when, at the time, Governor Blanco allowed myself and another senator, Senator Bourgeois, to take a helicopter ride in the city. And as we rode, we flew over the city, all I could see was water. And I would see at certain intervals, little bushes on top of the water. And I asked the pilot, I said, hey, what is this? What are those? Are those bushes? And he says, no, ma'am, those are the top of trees. And I said, so where are we? And he says, well, and it was very hard to determine where you were because there were no street signs or anything like that you could see because the water was that high. And he says, well, we're in New Orleans East. We're in your district. And all I could think about was, oh my God, there is nothing. We have lost everything. And I went to a fog at that point because we had lost everything, and all of my friends and family and my neighbors, it was like it never happened. They never existed, right? Mm-hmm. I came back to our little small apartment that we were in, and we had about 13 people in that little 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. And I stumbled up the stairs and I collapsed on the bed, and I told my husband, we have nothing. But then I said, but we have everything, because everything I care about in this entire world, it's right here in this 2-bedroom, 1-bath apartment. So we'll start over. And, with God's grace, we did.
More with Ann Duplessis in a moment, an incredible warrior who was really on the front lines during and after Katrina and really helped reshape the way education was envisioned across New Orleans and really across the state of Louisiana, and I'd attest across the Southeast. And we'll see you in a few minutes. We'll bring you back here in a few minutes. Thanks so much for sharing all that. Next, we want to introduce you to a young lady who was at the center of all of it. Her family evacuated, and she would later return in need of an education. that would best meet her needs. Again, we're here on the 20-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, taking time to reflect on the moment, honoring the lives lost, and talking about education reform that was so desperately needed in the aftermath. All right, Paul, why don't you introduce us to our next guest, because we're really excited to hear from her.
Brian, she was almost 2 years old when Katrina hit. Soraya Aldrich, she joins us now. Her mom saw Katrina was bearing down on New Orleans, and they packed their bags, drove to Texas. Soraya, we know you don't remember you don't have the visual memories, but you grew up as someone who was, in your whole family, dislocated. Welcome.
Hi, and thank you so much for the opportunity and just, giving me the space and to reflect on my story and my life. I really appreciate it.
Soraya, your mom's got this decision moment here, right? Many folks are head to the Superdome to kind of hunker down, and we all, either if we saw them live or have seen them then, those really remarkable scenes and images of the Superdome after during and after the storm. She decides, okay, we're going to pack up and head to Texas. Later, you'd return home. Obviously, everything is lost. You're very young, but how much did she talk about, maybe when you were older, that want and desire to get you guys home? At some point, we're going home. Do you remember conversations about that, or her talking about wanting to get you guys back to Louisiana?
Honestly, I was very young around the time, so I can't really remember like a conversation verbatim, but I knew that me and my family had been living in New Orleans for a very long time, and I think we just didn't want to, let that go. So the motive was always to come back to the city, I'm thinking. So yeah, we stayed in Texas a little bit over a year, and then we went back after, and we saw how we pretty much lost everything, but we still wanted to come back to the city that we loved.
Now, Soraya, you are joining us from Howard University, where you are you a freshman or sophomore now?
I'm actually a senior.
Nice.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, time flies.
Time flies,
Yeah, it
definitely.
does.
But you once your family came back to Louisiana, you ended up going to a historic African American founded school in New Orleans called St. Mary's Academy, where
Yes.
what was that like, being at St. Mary's? And we're going to talk about a connection with St. Mary's. But what was that like?
Honestly, it just felt like one big family because I was around people who looked like me, who kind of understood all of the struggles of what we had went through with Katrina, because I was one of the first classes that actually benefited from the Louisiana Scholars Program. That's what it was called at the time. Because I started pre-K, I want to say like 2008. So I'm pretty sure that's around the time Louisiana Scholars Program was implemented. So we were like the first class that at St. Mary's that took classes in the FEMA trailers. So yeah, we were in classes in the FEMA trailers because we lost the building in Katrina. And it honestly just felt like, yeah, like I said, like one big happy family. I've always felt supported, even at a young age from like preschool. So yeah.
The Louisiana Scholarship Program that you just mentioned was legislation that was sponsored by Senator Ann Duplessis at the time. And guess what? Ann is here.
Hi, how are you? Wow. This is incredible.
You know what I think about, ladies, and then obviously I think we're going to give you two the floor, maybe just to chat a little bit, and because it's really a remarkable. And Soraya, we were talking before, sort of, this post-Katrina effort to rebuild not just communities, but schools. And part of that journey was strengthening charter schools in New Orleans, but then the advent of the scholarship program that helps students like you get access to schools of choice. I remember the first time I went to Louisiana, it was probably about 2011, and we were going for some parent like rallies and information sessions, and maybe even, Paul, they might have been like sign-up events, like come sign up for the scholarship. And I remember seeing moms specifically, and some dads, but a lot of moms, there voicing what they wanted and knowing what was best for their kids, right? Knowing that this environment would best meet their needs. But they didn't have the means to get there. And the state stepped in, and leaders like Ann stepped in to ensure they could get there. And Ann, that's what is such a lasting legacy. And you're able to look across the camera here and see a young lady who's now a senior in college at Howard University, Howard University.
Awesome.
Right. And a product of school choice in Louisiana. It really is the word I've been using today. It really is incredible.
Yeah. You know, I actually am trying not to mess up my makeup because it literally just hit me, you know, looking at how eloquent you are, and you know, that this was everything that we tried to do and the fights we tried to have with giving kids opportunities, right, and parents an ability to choose what's going to work best. It's you're the result, and I'm very proud of that, and I'm very proud to know that you have gotten to Howard and a senior, and will someday be a senator somewhere, or maybe, you know. Awesome.
I'm pre-med. I want to be a doctor, but
oh, awesome! That's even better. Oh my God.
I still want to definitely give back to the city in any way I can. Definitely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what was it like, you know, during that time at St. Mary's? I just got to tell you, though, I went to a historically Black high school. I went to Xavier Prep, but that's okay.
I love Xavier too. We love you too. It's one of the
actually during that time, with both schools were having difficulty with students being able to support both schools. There was this joining where Xavier Prep and St. Mary's and even St. Augustine came together, and they were one big school. And that was such a historic time that these three independent, historically Black high schools who were formed to help educate Black students came together and was able to, you know, provide resources and education. So that was really a pretty good time. So I'd love to know more about your journey. And
honestly, like I said, it always did feel like a big happy family, because I pretty much went to St. Mary's from pre-K to the 12th grade. So I pretty much knew all of my teachers. I knew everybody I went to school with for a very long time. Still friends with a lot of the faculty. I go back to St. Mary's all the time and, you know, volunteer just to give back, because, you know, I feel like it's honestly like a domino effect.
Yes.
In a way, like if you didn't fight for school choice, then my mom wouldn't have heard of the Louisiana Scholars Program. And if she didn't hear about the Louisiana Scholars Program, I wouldn't have been able to go to St. Mary's. And if I didn't go to St. Mary's, I wouldn't be here at Howard. So it's like, it's honestly just like inspiring in a way, because you could take like one small thing, one small seed, sorry, I can't talk, and you just see it sprout into something so much bigger, and it's honestly inspiring. And I just wanted to tell you that.
Oh, well, I thank you. I thank you for being so courageous, and for having the fortitude to move and continue to push, right, with all of the things that you and your family may have experienced. It appears as though that did not deter your motivation to do good with your life and to be successful. So I'm very proud of that. And all of the problems that we may have had in trying to get the voucher, and the people who looked down on me and said that I had ruined public education and ruined teachers and the school system. I'm very proud that I did now. So thank you.
Yeah, it's really amazing to just sit here and kind of talk to someone who was at the forefront of it all. So very blessed to be here for the opportunity.
I think we both are. Very good.
Well, Paul, I'm glad we were off camera for that, because got a little dusty in the home studio here. And I'm, hundreds of miles away. Incredible, ladies. Thank you so much for sharing that and having that moment. I don't think you've ever met before, and to make that meeting. We're very grateful for it. And Paul, I don't know your thoughts.
Well, I'm looking at the somewhat into the past, our New Orleans past with Katrina, but looking at Soraya, we're looking into the future, and you're going to head to medical school. So it'd be great to come back a few years, maybe for Katrina 25, and be talking to a resident by that time.
Yeah.
We'll
Dr.
see.
Ulrich. That's right. Outstanding. Well, Ann, Soraya, we're incredibly grateful for the time, for taking some time to reflect on that, really historical moment in time, but then for us to remember not only what it took to fight for educational freedom across New Orleans and Louisiana, but really across the country. And it's a reminder for those of you watching and for our entire team at the American Federation for Children and this entire school choice movement, why we do what we do, why we stay up late nights, why we work a lot of weekends, why we skip holidays for this fight for school choice and educational freedom across America. You both are an incredible reminder of that. And we'll continue to work for legislative champions like Ann Duplessis and school choice beneficiaries like Soraya as well across the country. Thank you so much to both of you. For Paul Dauphin, I'm Brian Jodice, and on behalf of the entire team here at the American Federation for Children, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.